Every year, wildfires strike across the world. The damage from a large outbreak hits forests, wildlife, property, and there's often loss of human life. They strike when the air is hot and the land is dry, and spread when high winds fan the flames. Some fires are so intense, experienced firefighters can do nothing to stop them. In dry conditions, forests have always been prone to fire, with lightning being the major cause of naturally occurring blazes. Some environments, like eucalypt forests, have adapted to fire and can regenerate, but most trees cannot recover. October 2007, and fire broke out across a number of fronts in Southern California. Driven by powerful Santa Ana winds, the flames spread across the region, killing one person near San Diego and destroying several houses in the celebrity enclave of Malibu. Hundreds were forced from their homes. The combination of high temperatures, high winds, and very low humidity kept the fire moving, and fire crews could only watch as buildings went up in flames. Malibu's chaparral ecosystem has many small woody plants that are full of flammable oils. Its natural tendency is to burn every 15 to 45 years. This eliminates old growth, but people living in the area have interfered with this process, allowing large amounts of old, dry brush to accumulate. When fire eventually takes hold in the wooded areas, it takes a lot of buildings with it. The alignment of the canyons in the Malibu region matches the direction of the Santa Ana winds. When the fire started in Malibu Canyon, driven by the wind, there was very little the firefighters could do. Erratic wind gusts hampered efforts to drop water from aircraft and pushed the flames towards a research and engineering facility. About 500 firefighters worked to protect 200 homes in communities nestled in the hills. By the third day, the wildfires had burned more than 1,200 homes and businesses. Hotter temperatures and fierce wind gusts were predicted, and the flames were proving nearly impossible to fight. Satellite pictures clearly showed the extent of the fires burning near the Californian coast. The region had been in drought for several years, and meteorologists had been warning that fire conditions were extreme. Over the next month, conditions fluctuated. Winds would abate, allowing firefighters to regain control, but only for short periods. More than 1,700 firefighters, 15 helicopters, and 12 fixed-wing aircraft had been mobilized, and mopping up operations lasted for weeks. Investigators believed the fire was started deliberately, calling its origins suspicious in nature, though local media reports suggested the fire was started by campers. 6 firefighters were injured. 26 fire engines, 6 rescue units, and 180 firefighters were called in to battle a blaze of a very different type in Los Angeles. Americans like to think of the junction of Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street as their country's most famous intersection. But on this particular day, the location was drawing crowds for all the wrong reasons. The showbiz area is famous for its clubs and theatres. So when fire took hold of the Basque nightclub, firefighters were anxious to limit the damage to as small an area as possible. At one stage, authorities were concerned for the safety of the Capitol Records building. The nightclub, built in the 1920s, was not open at the time, and firefighters said it was fortunate that the fire happened in the early morning, so engines could get through the streets, usually clogged with traffic. Building fires present firemen with particular dangers, with walls or roofs weakened by the blaze, often giving way. At one stage, the huge billboard atop the building began to flex, and all units were pulled back to a safe distance in case the structure collapsed. Firemen spent hours making sure no embers remained. The building was so badly damaged, it had to be demolished. America's worst underground coal mine fire has been burning beneath Centralia, Pennsylvania, for more than 4 decades. It started in 1962, when a fire at a garbage dump jumped to the coal seams, spreading under the town. The fire is estimated to be about 1.5 million square metres in total area. In some places, it burns to a depth of more than 100 metres, and in other places, it can burn right at the surface. In 1969, officials created an underground barrier made from the remains of burnt coal to stop the fire, temporarily eliminating concern until it became obvious the barrier had failed. In 1982, the US government decided to buy all the homes in Centralia and relocate its people, a relative bargain at less than 1/10 the amount of the cost of putting out the fire. All but 10 Centralians took advantage of the government buyout and sold their homes, which were demolished. A few narrow row houses remain. The fire is following the coal seam, but the rock above the seam is very hard. To blast and physically dig the fire out would be enormously expensive. The steam brings gases with it, which is why the government wanted to evacuate the town. Coal has meant both boom and bust in Pennsylvania. Production peaked early in the 20th century, but has been in a slow decline ever since. The Los Alamos Research Laboratory in the US state of New Mexico. Since its establishment in the 1940s, Los Alamos has been involved with huge numbers of complex mathematical calculations. The installation of the research organization's latest in a long line of supercomputers. The system occupies more than 1,000 square meters of floor space and is connected by more than 760 kilometers of optical fiber cable. The computer is housed in 536 separate cabinets with a power requirement of 1.6 megawatts. Called Blue Mountain, it has 48 SGI Origin 2000 shared memory multiprocessor computers with a peak capacity of just over 3 trillion floating point mathematical operations per second. The supercomputer can simulate unfolding weather systems or predict how a galaxy was formed. The problem is it can crunch so much information that the raw data it delivers could be quite meaningless if it were not translated into some form of visual representation. So developers worked hard to deliver a display interface that could bring the results to life. When wildfire ripped through Calabasas in the Santa Monica Mountains, 80 homes were lost or damaged, and more than 73 million square meters were burned. What was different about this fire was that it was so closely monitored. Ambient air temperature, wind speed, and relative humidity were recorded hourly, and helicopters were used to chart the fire's spread. Researchers built upon this data set with more information from controlled burns in Florida. They wanted to learn more about chemical interactions within a blaze and the effects of slopes and other terrain on a fire's rate of spread. The fire researchers needed to understand the detailed behaviour of a spreading wildfire driven by wind through a distribution of trees, bushes and grass that drags the wind and alters its turbulence. The aim was to devise a computer model that could be used to predict the way a fire would develop in a given area under a variety of weather conditions. Accurate fire forecasting could save lives and minimise damage to precious forests. Blue Mountain could carry out all the calculations necessary, quicker than the fire itself would burn. In a simulation of the Calabasas fire, with all the weather conditions recorded during the real fire fed into the computer, the virtual fire behaved exactly the same as the actual fire. At one point, the fire covered 200 metres in just 30 seconds, trapping 3 firefighters. Though they were only metres from safety at the top of the ridge, flames more than 60 metres high overwhelmed them. This rapid rate of spread was accentuated by the topography and the wind. A variety of weather conditions can be fed into the computer to see how a fire in the same location would behave with winds from a different direction and with different air temperatures. Fire experts hope to compile a database of vulnerable areas that includes seasonal information about the fuel types and density of woodlands. At Calabasas, when the fire reached the canyon, it raced up the incline toward the firefighters. It took only 18 minutes to cover the entire slope. If fire chiefs had had access to this tool, the crews could have been pulled out before they were threatened, and they would have had a better idea about where assets could be best deployed. Vegetation maps of the Santa Monica Mountains have been made using an airborne spectrographic system developed and managed by the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. At the moment, the complexity of the fire models require supercomputers for the immense number of calculations. Computing power has been doubling every 18 months, which means fire models, now only open to research laboratories, should soon be available to fire agencies to help protect against the scourge of wildfire. In Australia, bushfires are a serious problem, and many of the fires that blacken vast areas of forest are deliberately started. Now, firefighters have a new tool to help identify fires sooner. The Fire Camera is a video surveillance device system that can detect and monitor fires from a great distance. The system can be remotely controlled or set to automatically scan the horizon. Its output is available at a number of monitoring sites. If the trial is successful, the FireCam system will be rolled out across New South Wales. The cameras are mounted on an observation tower on the edge of Sydney and can spot a fire 11 kilometres away. Using smoke recognition software, it scans the horizon. If it finds smoke, it is capable of determining the size, temperature and speed of the fire. The camera then alerts fire authorities via the internet or SMS. In the New South Wales bushfire season of 2007, 249 blazes were reported. Half of those were due to arson. The system can be used to record suspicious activity and provide evidence for investigators to prosecute arsonists. A different airborne system is also being used in New South Wales. A plane equipped with a high-definition TV camera sends live pictures back to the ground via Inmarsat's Swift 64 satellite. Fire authorities say reports from crews on the ground, combined with live vision of a blaze, will help them battle bushfires more effectively. Across Australia, wildfire has always been a problem, but in the southeastern part of the continent, a decade of severe drought conditions has made the fire problem extreme. The technology has been adapted from a system originally developed for use on oil drilling rigs. Sydney is surrounded by vast tracts of eucalyptus forest. The rugged country is poorly served by access roads, and the state's Rural Fire Authority has to be reliant on new technologies to fight the intense bushfires that strike during the summer months. A large fire raged on a backlot at Universal Studios in Los Angeles recently, devouring several movie sets and the theme park's King Kong attraction. At least one building was burned, and as many as 3 blocks of movie facades were destroyed. 2 mock New York and New England streets used for movie making and tourist displays were a total loss. It was the second fire at the historic site in nearly 2 decades. It levelled facades, hollowed out buildings, and left the kind of catastrophe filmmakers are often trying to recreate. The blaze broke out on a backlot soundstage. 40 to 50,000 videos and film reels were damaged in the vault, but there were duplicates stored at a different location. The videos included every film that Universal has produced, and footage from television series like Miami Vice and I Love Lucy. There was at least one explosion. At one point, the blaze was 2 city blocks wide, and low water pressure forced firefighters to get reserves from lakes and ponds on the property. A thick column of smoke rose hundreds of metres into the air, hampering the work of helicopters fighting the blaze. More than 100 firefighters were trying to prevent the flames from spreading to nearby brush. 6 suffered minor injuries. The Universal Studio Complex is located just 14 kilometres north of central Los Angeles, and locals were concerned that the blaze would spread to residential areas. A Universal Studios spokesman said the theme park would open as usual, though the studio tour would not go to the damaged King Kong part of the attraction. Scenes from several blockbuster films and television shows have been filmed at the studio, including War of the Worlds, When Harry Met Sally, and Scrubs. At one stage, the flames ruptured propane gas canisters, which fed the blaze. To the east of the studios, residents of Griffith Park were concerned that the thick vegetation that gives the area its character might catch fire. Firefighters said fire protection features, introduced after the 1990 fire, were not working properly. Deluge tanks designed to dump water on the facades to extinguish fire instantly appeared to have malfunctioned. For hours after the blaze had been brought under control, firefighters kept dousing the area to ensure no hotspots remained. The archival vaults containing original negatives were not touched, and most films or tapes lost have surviving duplicates. Every year, the Spanish city of Valencia celebrates its Festival of Fire. Hundreds of wood and cardboard statues called ninots are lovingly prepared. Across the city, neighbourhoods build their own unique fala, an area where the ninots are assembled, and parades crowd the streets. The ritual culminates in a night of festivities, La Crema, when at 600 different falas the statues will be burned. As a part of the tradition of Phallus Week, hundreds of women, known as faleras, parade the city to a background of very loud fireworks. The celebration has its origins in the days when carpenters used wooden lamps called perro to light their workshops. At the end of winter, on the night before the Feast of San Jose, the lamps were burned out in the street. The lamps started being decorated with old clothes and fabric to make them have human form. These were the first ninots. During the 19th century, they grew larger, becoming the decorative statues familiar to today's Valencia. On the big night, high winds in the region almost forced the cancellation of some planned fireworks, and firemen were told to be on alert. Spontaneous fireworks displays occur everywhere during the days leading up to La Crema. Every afternoon in the Plaza de Ayuntamiento, a huge pile of firecrackers is ignited, making the ground tremble. Traditionally, the falla in the Plaza del Ayuntamiento is burned last. the local fire brigades have special ways of protecting the town's buildings from fire during the festival. Vulnerable shops are covered with fireproof tarps, while other buildings are sprayed with water. And each year, one of the ninots is spared from destruction by popular vote and exhibited in the local Museum of the Ninot, along with the other favourites from years past. Valencia's administrators say the 5-day event of noise and fire attracts 1 million visitors. Another feast day, this one in Mexico, is also celebrated in a fiery way. The Mixtec community of Villa de Tamizulrapam del Progreso, located in the Mexican state of Oaxaca, play a game similar to hockey using a ball of fire. 10 men, gathered in front of the municipal palace, set fire to a wooden ball covered in animal grease. Then, using sticks, the game begins. The game always takes place at night to show the fire to its best advantage. The origin of the game is not clearly understood, but it is known that it was played before the Spanish conquest of Mexico in 1519. The object is to take the ball of fire as far into the opponent's field as possible. Residents refer to the game as a battle. It was prohibited by the Spanish conquistadors because they thought it was witchery and related to the devil.